and the NDC partnership, who are together hosting this webinar for you. We'll be hearing from our partners during the event, and so I'll wait and let them introduce themselves in a moment. Okay, I think that we have a good critical mass of participants, so I'm going to share my screen so that we can begin. To let everyone know, just a few housekeeping points. You will have noticed when you join the webinar that it will be recorded and you will receive a link after the webinar if you'd like to share that with others or to revisit the presentations. You'll also receive a link to those presentations that you see today. During the webinar, feel free to use the chat to converse with each other. And the organizers will do our best to answer questions if you put them there. But there will be a Q&A, a question and answer session at the end of the webinar where we look forward to hearing from you. If we have insufficient time to answer all of your questions, we will gather those from the chat and reach out to you after the webinar just to ensure that everyone's questions are addressed. So I'm hoping that everyone is seeing my screen, and we'll begin now. So again, thanks and welcome to everyone for joining this webinar on the topic of including non-CO₂ pollutants in enhanced NDCs. If you're here, I'm fairly certain that you are familiar with the term NDCs, nationally determined contributions. We'll review that during the webinar. Just a quick overview of what we'll cover today. In addition to this brief introduction, we'll have a presentation that I will provide you with on the topic of why it's important to consider non-CO₂ pollutants in NDCs and its relevance to the United Nations Framework Convention process and the requirement to enhance NDCs in the new round coming up. And you'll hear me refer to, and others as well, to NDC 3.0, which is the upcoming round of contributions that countries are in the process of preparing now. We'll then hear from special guests from Colombia who will share with us their experience integrating non-CO₂ pollutants in their previous NDCs and national policies. They have some very interesting experience to share with us and inspire others to do the same. We will then have a presentation from the Clean Air Fund, Tom Grills, who will be doing a deeper dive on air quality and why it's important to consider air quality also in the NDCs and how to integrate that lens into NDC preparations. And then we'll hear from the NDC partnership, and they'll give us also a brief view on the upcoming NDC iteration and also the tools that they offer countries to support with the enhancement. And then I'll come back and be with you again at the end of the webinar, where I'll share with you the Climate and Clean Air Coalition's tool and resources for supporting NDCs, and we'll finish with a Q&A. So let's begin with just an overview, an introduction to the importance of non-CO₂ pollutants and air quality considerations in NDCs. You may be familiar with the term non-CO2 pollutants. This is something that we've heard in in the most recent decisions from the United Nations Framework Convention. COP last year was a part of the outcome decisions, and but sometimes we hear a variety of terms that are similar, and so I just wanted to cover those so that to help clarify. So non-CO2 greenhouse gases are basically every greenhouse gas other than carbon dioxide. These greenhouse gases often have much higher global warming potential, or GWP, than carbon dioxide. And they're highly effective at warming the planet. These include methane, nitrous oxide, hydrofluorocarbons, or HFCs, the perfluorocarbons, and sulfur hexafluoride. You'll also sometimes hear the term short-lived climate pollutants, or SLCPs. In the IPCC reports, they are also referred to as SLCFs, or short-lived climate forcers. These gases remain in the atmosphere for a short time. They have a short lifetime, from days to 15 years, so very short, compared to CO2, which has hundreds to 1,000 years in the atmosphere. These pollutants, the SLCPs, also have a very significant warming impact during their lifespan. And they contribute to both climate change and air pollution. We'll take a look at how that is in the next slides. These SLCPs include methane, black carbon, or soot, sometimes referred to as soot, hydrofluorocarbons, and tropospheric ozone. So then here at the bottom, you'll see together the non-greenhouse gases and the short-lived climate pollutants. If we put them all together, we refer to that group of pollutants as the non-CO2 pollutants that 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 are everything other than CO2. We sometimes refer to these, or sometimes you'll hear them referred to as super pollutants because of their contribution to warming, because how potent they are in concentrations in the atmosphere. These non-CO2 pollutants have a variety of sources, and you'll see here with the different images, the different sources of those pollutants. In the center line and column, you'll see the variation of lifetime in the atmosphere. So from days, some of them weeks, and some of them just a few years. And the impacts that these non-CO2 pollutants have can be local, regional, or global. On the right-hand side of the screen, you see also within the super pollutant category, but the two pollutants that have long lifetimes, those are nitrous oxide, or N2O, and CO2. CO2 is not a super pollutant. That has its own category, but we put it here so that you are aware that these are long life pollutants, the CO2 and nitrous oxide. The sources of these pollutants point to their solutions. Many of the non-CO2 pollutants share the same sources as CO2 and other air pollutants. And it's at those sources that we can determine where the opportunities are for reducing those pollutants, and in reducing them, not only contributing to climate benefits, but to the air quality benefits, food security benefits, and others. The variety of sectors and solutions and policy areas require attention and prioritization. To date, depending on the pollutant and the sources, some of these pollutants have not been prioritized in national planning, and because of the benefits that they have in the guidance that CCAC is sharing with and launching today, we are encouraging countries to give greater priority to these pollutants. Some net zero policies already significantly reduce levels of non-CO₂ pollutants. And so there are many opportunities to spotlight those, including them in your NDCs, without even necessarily uh, changing or adding elements to the NDC, simply ensuring that the work that countries are already doing to bring net zero policies online are recognized and reported in their NDCs. This very colorful slide here is just a summary for your reference that includes all of the non-CO₂ pollutants, so that you can understand the difference between these terminologies. And here on the right-hand side, all of the different impacts from health to impacts on ecosystems and agriculture. Um, as we look at this slide, we see not only are the non-CO₂ pollutants here in the very left-hand column, a wide variety of pollutants with a wide variety of health impacts. But we also see that because of those impacts, we're addressing those pollutants will go beyond just addressing the climate crisis to helping countries with their air quality and food security. And we'll hear more about that from our next presentation from the Clean Air Fund. Why is it so important to address non-CO₂ pollutants? Well, I've mentioned some of the additional impacts, and those impacts, when we address those pollutants and reduce them in country, become benefits. But here I'd like to spotlight that these pollutants are responsible for nearly half of current global warming. We talk about this as the other half of warming. An estimated 0.6 degrees of global warming could be avoided by mitigating the short-lived climate pollutants, and even more if we mitigate all superpollutants. Reducing them is critical to mitigating the worst effects of climate change before 2050. And it's in this short-term time span that countries are focusing the upcoming NDCs. We want to ensure that we prevent as much warming in the next round of NDCs, in the next 5-year cycle of NDCs, to control global warming and ensure that we do not surpass for long the 1.5 safety limit from the Paris Agreement. Here's just another way to say the same messages that I've been pointing out, that the short-lived climate pollutants and these non-CO₂ pollutants, they impact the climate, they impact health and food security. By reducing these pollutants, scientists and researchers tell us that we could avoid 2.4 million premature deaths annually, as well as reducing exposure to air pollution, which causes a variety of health effects, and reducing heat exposure, which impacts not only human well-being, but also well-being of ecosystems and has major effects on the economy. Now I'd like to share a few reflections and experiences from various countries that CCAC has worked with to support their inclusion of non-CO₂ and air quality considerations into NDCs. Nigeria, we've been working with for quite some time, and they have used air quality. They have included air quality and non-CO₂ pollutants in their NDCs, recognizing the benefits not only to mitigation of greenhouse gases, but also those benefits to adaptation that I've pointed out: food security, agriculture, ecosystem preservation, and reduced warming, which protects communities. Micronesia has also included non-CO₂ pollutants in their previous NDCs, and their Minister of Climate and Environment points out that the next round of NDCs will determine the survival of many of the most vulnerable people and species on Earth. And this is one of the reasons why including non-CO₂ pollutants are life-saving ingredient that all NDC 3.0 must include. And we'll hear from Colombia directly, so I'll just share this slide, but I'll let our special guest from Colombia share more about their experience. The air quality benefits of addressing non-CO₂ pollutants in NDCs and in national policy are enormous, as we have seen in the previous slides, and a variety of countries that CCAC has worked with have shared with us here their experience. If I could please ask that anyone who has their speaker on, please mute their speaker. Sorry, we're getting some sound from one of the participants. Please make sure that your speaker is muted. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. A quick summary and spotlight onto why we are here today, which is the new round of NDCs that countries that have signed the Paris Agreement will be required to submit in 2025. The aspirational deadline for those NDCs is February of 2025. Although I understand that there's some flexibility built into that, and so we expect countries to be submitting those NDCs to the United Nations throughout the upcoming year. Following the Paris Agreement, the original agreement in 2015, there have been a number of decisions under the negotiations of the Paris Agreement that have given greater clarity as to what NDCs should include. Many of you may know that the first round of NDCs, countries did their best to submit an NDC that was ambitious, and those NDCs were very different from country to country due to the lack of let's say, rules and format that from the system. But now, as a result of these decisions, we have a clearer idea of what NDCs should include. We know that NDCs are required to include all greenhouse gases, all economic sectors, and all categories, and that is a decision from the global stocktake, which countries decided at the last Conference of the Parties. this past year in Dubai. We also know that NDCs must align with the Paris Agreement temperature target, and that temperature target for most is preventing global warming from surpassing 1.5 degrees Celsius. As many of you know, the IPCC sixth assessment report published just a few years ago has explained that on most pathways there is a likelihood that the world will surpass for a certain period of time that 1.5 degree limit. But all of the efforts that we are taking now as countries and as partners are to reduce any overshoot and hopefully even maintain the world on a 1.5 degree pathway so that we do not surpass that safe temperature limit. And finally, would like to point out that another aspect that countries must take into consideration in this new round is the requirement to include information that supports clarity, transparency, and understanding. So this is part of the enhanced transparency framework, and it includes also the requirement that countries have this year to submit their first biennial transparency report. And if that's a new concept to you, the NDC guidance that CCAC has just published will give you much more detail on what those biennial transparency reports are and what these concepts of clarity, transparency, and understanding are, so that you have a roadmap on how to include that in the preparation of your NDC and moving forward. The CCAC guidance that we have just published is a 5-chapter guide, and I'll come back at the end of the webinar and give you a little bit more detail. But I wanted to spotlight here the 4 major recommendations that the Climate Clean Air Coalition offer to countries to enhance the ambition of their NDCs by targeting non-CO₂ pollutants. What we hope to see in upcoming NDCs is that countries include in their economy-wide targets both carbon dioxide and non-CO₂ pollutants across all sectors. And here I'd like to just underline the importance of a comprehensive approach that prioritizes both the non-CO₂ and carbon dioxide. Of course, the mitigation of carbon dioxide is essential to addressing the climate in the long term. We also suggest that countries integrate air quality planning with their climate strategies as part and parcel to the NDC NDC 3.0. We recommend that the NDCs harness related global, regional, and national strategies to use those parallel strategies or aligned strategies to access resources and to strengthen the implementation of the NDCs. And finally, we stress the importance of comprehensive reporting on the non-CO₂ pollutants in addition to carbon dioxide in the upcoming NDC. This image here that looks like a map for creating some sort of complex electrical grid is actually just a summary of how strong and comprehensive reporting on the non-CO2 can contribute to enhanced action in the NDCs, while also supporting health and food security goals, as well as other sustainable development goals. So the key takeaways are that reducing non-CO2 pollutant emissions is absolutely critical to preventing near-term warming and to avoiding harmful impacts on human health. Integrating non-CO2 pollutants is an opportunity to show increased ambition, which is required under the Paris Agreement, as well as to achieve climate resilient development. Many of these solutions and opportunities bring mitigation, adaptation, and sustainable development benefits to countries. And then also that the resources, tools, and support that are available from a range of organizations, and you'll hear from some in addition to the CCAC today, in order to achieve the integration of these pollutants into your NDCs. So that's the end of the first presentation, and now I would like to invite our guest speaker from Colombia to join us, and she will share with us the experience of Colombia. Ms. Carolina Garzón from the Ministry of Environment in Colombia. Carolina, I turn over to you.
Thank you, Ana Maria. Can you hear me and can you see my slide?
Yes, we do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm going to share a little bit of the experience of Colombia in this integration of non-CO2 pollutants into our NDC. I'm Carolina Garzón. I support the Ministry of Environment in topics related with mitigation actions and some small support in short like climate pollutants. I want to share with all of you the general context of Colombia. We start with in 2013 with a different context that we have right now, and I think this is important because it's been a long effort, hand by hand with the CCAC, and we have been working on the SLCP mitigation strategy since 2018. Here in the slide is 2019. So you can see that we have a lot of milestones in these years. We start with a diversity of pollutants, emission sources, different stakeholders, different sectoral programs, non-integrated between each others, and this context has been evolved, has been changed due to different actions in the different sectors, different ministries, and different cooperation has support us to change these tendencies on implementations and actions on short-life climate pollutants. We, as a main milestone, has our first black carbon inventory, and since 2019 we have been developing different iteration of this inventory of black carbon. As a more recent milestone, or next BTR will have the third inventory of black carbon. So it's a work that has been doing in different iteration, and it's really important for us because it help us to understand the behavior of this pollutant and what action we need to do to reduce those emissions. We have some regulations, some important regulations related with mobile sources and non-road emissions, also related with methane emissions, especially for the hydrocarbon sectors. And we have been developed a lot of work with these implementation plans that have helped us to understand what we need to do in different aspects, including implementation measures to set the landscape for the correct implementation of our goals. It has been since 2022 a lot of work working on that sectors, and the ministry especially is involved in this development of the implementation plans. And for those plans, we are trying to include the correlation between different actions and different pollutants as well. Uh, we, in the strategy of short-life climate pollutants, have developed different lines of actions. The first one is the information management that is being related to the black carbon action inventory. Also, the assessment of multiple benefits approach that is being held this year with the help of the CCAC, and we want to implement those analyses for different mitigation measures on in our NDC. The institutional strengthening, we have been supporting different sectors, trying to integrate all the efforts to understand the impact of different mitigation actions in different emissions, greenhouse gases, and different pollutants. And this last action, that is SLCP mitigation actions, is mainly related with the analysis of a portfolio with the inclusion of the reduction or potential reduction for SLCP. In this year, we are developing those that analyze. We have in our NDC different mitigation actions. Colombia's NDC has a specific target for reduction of black carbon, that is to reduce 40% of the black carbon emissions compared to the 2014 emissions levels. We have some specific mitigation measures for black carbon, and we have also a set of measures to reduce other greenhouse gases, including CO2. This year, we are developing the evaluation of how can we integrate those mitigation actions and understand what are the implications in short-life climate pollutants for the greenhouse gas mitigation actions. What we need to do to reach those targets. So this integration is being evaluated right now, and for our next NDC, we want to have a portfolio much more stronger that has this integration, this clear message for the community to understand not only what are the implications on greenhouse gases, but also with black carbon, with methane reductions, and also with co-benefits. The co-benefits analysis is really important for us because we have some mitigation measures that doesn't have the cost analysis as a full understanding of the implications, and this part can help us to rise those mitigation actions that are especially important for us in our territory, that it's important for the health of our people. So we want to try to integrate all this information and try to transmit it in a more effective way. For our BTR, we are also working, trying to be more transparent with the information that has been developed with the EDM, that is the institution in charge of the inventory, with the support of different entities. So we not only with the next NDC, the next round of NDC, we are working, but also with the implementation of the transparency framework in the framework of the BTR that we are working right now to reach those targets. So this integration this is just a short presentation of how we are working and what we expect to do for the next NDC, trying to involve all the message that Colombia has been making in different spaces and different scenarios, and transmitted it in a more clear way, and trying to integrate in a more specific target for every measure in our portfolio of mitigation actions. That's the plan for now. And that's my short presentation. I hope that maybe someone can uh, be informed by this and take our experience. We are open to hear from you and to share in a more detailed way our experience. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Caro. That was really wonderful and very inspiring. I hope that others, you'll see there are many applauses coming from the from the audience. Thank you for the support. Um, and we will, in the Q&A session, if people have specific questions for Carolina from Colombia about the experience in their country, please bring those questions at the end of the session. So before we move to the next session, I thought it would be interesting to give ourselves a little bit of an opportunity to know those of us who are here in the audience today. My colleague Jimmy is going to help me with a few polling questions, just so that we can get a sense of who's here and who's involved in the preparations of their NDCs. So, Jimmy, if you could help with the poll, our first question for the audience um, is um, is whether or not you are directly involved in preparations of your country's NDC. I still see Carolina's presentation, so um, maybe, Caro, thank you. Um, let's see if the poll will pop up for people so that you can let us know, are you involved directly in the preparation of your country's NDC? Jimmy, I'm not seeing the poll, so I think there may be a technical issue with the poll. So perhaps what I would ask folks to do, the audience to do, if you are directly involved, you could just put a message in the meeting chat. Oh, here we go. Sorry. There's the poll. Are you directly involved in the preparation of your country's NDC? You should see a window on your screen. If you can let us know, yes, you're involved, no, or indirectly perhaps involved. Thank you. And it looks like most of us here today are not involved, and then quite a few are indirectly involved. Only 10% of the audience is directly involved. Well, this is good because this could be inspiring to us to get more involved as we learn more about how to do the integration of non-CO₂ in NDCs. Our second question for the poll is whether or not you were involved in preparing or implementing your country's previous NDC. So that would have been NDC, the original, or NDC 2.0. Were you involved in preparing or implementing? Maybe not in the preparation of the actual NDC, but perhaps you work for a branch of the government or an organization, or even a financing institution that supported implementation in your country, maybe even in another country. So it looks like some people have been involved in implementation, but quite a few have not been involved either in preparations or implementation. So we hope that will change in the future as we move into NDC 3.0. And then our final question, just to get a sense, uh, do you have experience with or knowledge of the non-CO₂ pollutants? What's your level of exposure or understanding of non-CO₂ pollutants? Yes, you have quite a lot of experience. Yes, but perhaps just a little bit. Or nope, these are totally new to me. And I see the responses popping up. So this is wonderful. Quite a lot. The majority of respondents have a significant amount of exposure or understanding of non-CO₂ pollutants. And most of you are familiar with them. So thank you. All right. Well, that's interesting. Get to know our audience just a little bit better and get to know each other a little bit better. So now I would like to invite our next speaker to the table or to the podium, to the virtual podium. It will be Tom Grills from the Clean Air Fund. Tom, thank you for joining us. The Clean Air Fund is a partner organization of the Climate Clean Air Coalition, an extraordinarily important partner, and I'll let Tom tell you more about the work that they do, and also to share with us the importance of addressing clean air or air quality in the preparations of NDCs. Tom, over to you. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Anna Maria. Just checking you can hear me and see my slides. Perfect.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks, and thanks everyone. I'm really excited to have the opportunity to talk to you for the next 10 minutes or so about kind of the linkages between air pollution and climate change, and as Anna Maria said, why we should be considering these together and specifically through the NDC process. So just first of all, to give a brief introduction to myself and the Clean Air Fund, my name is Tom. I'm leading our work on non-CO₂ pollutants. And the Clean Air Fund is a global philanthropic organization working on air pollution. We have teams and programs in the UK, in the EU, in India, in Ghana, in South Africa. And then we also have several global thematic programs, including a new one that I'm leading on black carbon specifically. So one of those key non-CO₂ pollutants to consider in the NDCs. And we fund work across the full spectrum of air quality, so promoting air quality data, from building public demand, and then also supporting decision makers to take action on air pollution. So first of all, I just wanted to dig in a little bit more on the impacts of air pollution to add to what Anna Maria has already spoken through. So to start with, kind of the main thing that comes to mind when we think about air pollution is the health impacts. And these different pollutants that affect human health get into our respiratory systems, into our lungs, into our hearts, and are associated with an increasing number of important health risk factors, from respiratory diseases to cardiovascular diseases, but also increasingly with dementia and other health issues too. And what this all adds up to is some kind of staggering statistics on the health effects of this across countries worldwide. So globally, air pollution contributes to over 8 million premature deaths. And this is the second leading risk factor for premature deaths worldwide. And 700,000 of those premature deaths are in children under the age of 5 years. So a very large impact on both birth outcomes and also young children. And that's 15% of all global deaths in children under 5 years old. And these impacts are at the moment disproportionately linked to many lower and middle income countries where concentrations of air pollution are often higher. And they also often disproportionately affect certain and often disadvantaged communities. So be that through burning of specific fuels in households or communities living in proximity to large sources of air pollution, for example, busy roads. And it's not just the health effects, but also air pollution contributes to environmental and agricultural effects as well. So tropospheric ozone, another one of those non-CO2 pollutants, can contribute to up to 16% of crop losses. And the bar chart on the right-hand side here shows that outdoor air pollution, what we're all breathing every day, contributes to a larger number of premature deaths than tuberculosis, HIV/AIDS, and malaria combined. So this is a massive global health issue, but also often isn't thought about as such because it has these indirect effects into those health risk factors. And as you can imagine, because of that massive effect on public health, on people, on the workforce, it also has massive economic impact. So from affecting reduced work days, reduced productivities, increased healthcare costs for governments, air pollution as a whole has economic costs of about 6% of the global GDP. So a really significant chunk of global GDP each year is costed against by these effects of air pollution, and that's about $8 trillion. And another kind of big number globally on this is about 1.2 billion work days each year are lost because of people that are sick or off work due to air pollution. And then the final thing I wanted to flag in terms of the economic consideration here is if we think about the economic benefits of improving air pollution alongside the climate benefits, about 8 gigatons of CO2 equivalent emissions reductions would flip from having a net negative economic effect, so where the cost of the solution is more than the benefit, to a net positive. So thinking about air pollution and climate together also really strengthens the economic case for action. And in fact, the financial value we could get from delivering cleaner air would actually exceed the costs of all of the work needed to meet the Paris Agreement goals. So the scale of magnitude of the health and economic benefits of air pollution is really comparable and important in the context of climate change. So I just, again, have a kind of separate way of, it's a slightly different way of looking at the same set of questions that Anna Maria presented earlier on pollutants. So why are climate change and air pollution so linked? So why do we need to think about these two together? I would just simplify this to two main points. So the first one is they share the same sources. So in terms of fuels, it's fossil fuels, biomass, fugitive and natural emissions. These are the main sources of greenhouse gases, non-CO2 pollutants, super pollutants, air pollutants, whatever you want to call them. These human activities are producing things in the atmosphere that are contributing to both of these problems. And then if we look at the kind of economic sectors of which we need to be thinking about all in our NDCs, then also all of these sectors are contributing to both, from power, transport, residential, agricultural, waste, industry. All of those sectors are affecting both of these problems simultaneously. And then the second point I want to make around this link is that they also share pollutants. So if we just create a simplified Venn diagram, on the left, we have the things that human activities emit into the atmosphere that affect air pollution. And on the right, we have climate change. You can see that we have an area in the middle where we get both. So if we fill that in, you can see that there's several pollutants that are affecting both climate change and air pollution simultaneously. For example, black carbon and tropospheric ozone. And then just to complicate it slightly further, if we look at how these things interact in the atmosphere and affect one another, you can see that you get these other arrows. So methane, for example, affects tropospheric ozone, which is having those air pollution impacts. So all of these pollutants are linked, and when we're monitoring them, when we're reporting them, it makes sense to consider these trade-offs and these potential win-wins from reducing these pollutants. And then to link back to the kind of topic here, I've just highlighted those non-CO2 pollutants that the CCAC has the guidance on. So black carbon and tropospheric ozone in the center there, methane, HFCs, and nitrous oxide. So these are really important for fast climate mitigation and also for those economic and health impacts of air pollution. So considering the shared sources and shared pollutants, at every level, from policies to fuel transitions to people's perspectives on this to the planet, air pollution and climate change are linked. And it's really very challenging to kind of disentangle these and treat these two issues completely separately. So very briefly, to give one example with black carbon, one of those key pollutants, is black carbon is a major component of air pollution, but it also has these unique effects on climate change. For example, when it lands on snow and ice surfaces, it darkens them, like you can see in this picture. So in the Arctic, in the Andes, in the Himalayas, and other regions with snow and ice, it contributes to increased melt, and this creates a feedback loop which increases warming in those regions. It also has big effects on weather patterns, so monsoon shift, droughts, and things like that. So these more local and regional climate effects that what is typically considered as an air pollutant is affecting. And that's why it's important for this also to be considered in NDCs alongside those greenhouse gases. So to try and summarize this, I think these two things can be mutually reinforcing and offer governments and NDCs a chance to showcase collective action and to pull in work from different government departments and integrate what we're doing on these problems. So four main points would be one of the main driver of climate change is burning fossil fuels. This is also a major contributor to air pollution. So where we're doing structural changes to reduce fossil fuels, it's important to also consider the other benefits that's having on air pollution and health. Second point is around often the solutions are the same. So from renewable energy, electric mobility, more active transport, and many of the interventions in NDCs, these are solutions for both. So considering and mentioning the health and air pollution benefits is an important thing to include in the NDC to showcase those other elements of the Paris Agreement on sustainable development and poverty eradication. Thirdly, we have these very specific pollutants like black carbon, which have important effects on both. And the NDCs provide a great platform to showcase action, exactly like Caro spoke through from Colombia just before me. And then finally, as another driver to look at this is air pollution in some places can be seen as a more local and present issue. It's experienced in a way that people can often more easily understand than long-term climate change. And it can sometimes be less politically decisive as well. So in some cases, air pollution can be an effective route to drive higher ambition from politicians and to see benefits within typical political cycles. So we can leverage some of the benefits on clean air to also increase ambition and bring in more public and political support for some of the actions to take in NDCs. So just to wrap that up, I think it's important to consider these together for it to be cheaper, to make the economic case, to have that fast action from short-lived climate pollutants, and to do it in a fair way, looking at who is disproportionately affected from these emissions. And finally, I would say that in particular, from the air pollution side, that a great action to take and consider in your NDC is integrating black carbon. So having a separate additional quantified target on black carbon, similar to Nigeria and Colombia that we've seen some examples from already. And then also considering the health benefits of the actions that are being taken and trying to quantify and mention those in the context of actions in the transport sector, the waste sector, and others. So with that, I'll pass back to you, Anna Maria. And yeah, any questions, happy to respond.
Thanks so much, Tom. That was an excellent presentation to give us a clearer idea of these relationships between climate and air quality and how we can use that information to strengthen the NDCs and as a result strengthen national approaches to both climate and health. Thanks. That was excellent. Now I'd like to turn over to our next speaker from also another partner organization of the Climate Clean Air Coalition. This is Dr. Sarah Hertel from the NDC partnership. Sarah is an NDC enhancement knowledge specialist, and she will be sharing with us a presentation on some of the tools that the NDC partnership offers, as well as key messages for the upcoming NDCs. So Sarah, I turn over to you, and thank you for joining us today.
Great, thank you so much. Are you able to see my screen here?
Yes,
okay,
for sure.
Great.
Thanks.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Really, really appreciate the opportunity to be here to speak more about the NDC partnership and what we do as an organization. I will keep this very brief as I know we're running out of time. So I will just jump right in to set the scene around the global stocktake. As we all know, the Paris Agreement calls for parties to assess progress towards achieving its long-term goals. And this effort allows us to take inventory, identify gaps, and work together towards effective climate solutions. The first global stocktake presents a critical turning point for us to take a long, hard look at the state of our planet and chart a better course for the future. And the global stocktake also showed that while significant collective progress has been made, we're still off track to achieve the Paris Agreement goals. There are three critical gaps in our shortage in achieving this goal, and we believe those are ambition, implementation, and in finance. In order to achieve the goals by our set timeline, we need increased ambition in mitigation and adaptation action, transformational as opposed to incremental change in systems to achieve net zero and climate resilience, more and better access to finance for climate action, and more effective international cooperation and credible initiatives. We believe that the global stocktake can serve as an opportunity for course correction to ramp up ambition, accelerate collaboration, and then act with necessary urgency. In the months ahead, the NDC partnership will continue our support to the development of high quality, ambitious, implementable, and investable NDCs 3.0 that are aligned to the 1.5 degree target aligned with the Paris Agreement, including all greenhouse gases and all sectors. We will provide continual critical support to countries with their NDCs 3.0, including a number of specific items, which I've laid out here on the slide. The first being the development and launch of the NDC 3.0 Navigator in collaboration with the UNFCCC Secretariat, as well as 30 additional partners and technical inputs from UNDP and WRI. I will put a link in the chat to the NDC Navigator, and I will discuss it very briefly in an upcoming slide. But the NDC 3.0 Navigator aims to inform and inspire country NDC teams, their experts, and their partners on how to develop ambition and increase the implementability and financeability of their NDCs. We also provision dedicated support through the global call for NDCs 3.0 and LT LEDs, including providing feedback and enhancing country submissions for their NDCs and support them in being matched with partner organizations who can support their requests financially and or technically. And then we also coordinate with partners to ensure the alignment around support provided for both NDCs 3.0 and LT LEDs and long-term strategies by highlighting the different support gaps identified to reduce duplication and make sure that resources are mobilized effectively. And finally, we support capacity development through co-hosting a number of different events, but currently we are co-hosting the NDCs 3.0 regional fora that are mostly complete as of now. We have two remaining, three remaining. We have one coming up in Tunisia, then in Thailand, and then in Rwanda. Apologies. And we are co-hosting that with UNEP, UNDP, the UNFCCC Secretariat, and the CCAC is a key partner there as well. And they are meant to bring together country representatives from ministries of environment and finance and other ministries to provide guidance and open discussion on how to raise ambition of NDCs 3.0 and then help countries prepare their successful implementation. And this is more about the NDC 3.0 Navigator. We all know that there's no shortage of guidance on how to develop and raise ambition of the NDCs, but it is very challenging for countries to navigate through this while also trying to incorporate the outcomes of the global stocktake and identify ambition-raising opportunities that are the most relevant to them. The Navigator helps draw together and present this information in one place. It is an interactive online tool, and it was developed to help governments in developing countries and the organizations supporting them to develop their NDCs in a ambitious, implementable, and financeable way, while also presenting wider context around NDCs and the opportunity around NDCs 3.0 for increased ambition. There are a number of different routes within the NDC 3.0 Navigator, which you can explore at this link here, to creating these types of NDCs that are ambitious, implementable, and financeable. And there is also a webinar that I will put in the chat on how to navigate this in a technical way. So with that, thank you so much for having me. I know this was a very short presentation, so thank you for the engagement, and I look forward to following up, and we'll put the resources I mentioned in the chat.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sarah. That was wonderful. It was short and sweet and really got to the point. I think you covered all the essential parts there, and thanks for highlighting the NDC regional fora. There's a lot that people can join virtually. You don't need to be physically at those fora to get the benefits of what's happening there. And so I think at the NDC partnership as well as CCAC websites, you can find out more information about what's happening at those forums. And Sarah shared the QR code to the NDC partnership as well as to their tools, but we will share those and the whole presentation with participants later. So let's move to the final session of our webinar, where I have the pleasure of explaining some of the tools that the CCAC offers to support countries in preparing and enhancing their NDCs. And it's a particular pleasure to be able to share with you all for the first time that we have recently, as of yesterday, completed a package of guidance that goes deep in with details on how countries can do this in their upcoming NDCs. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But first, just a big picture. The CCAC offers an integrated and complementary approach to support countries that includes this guidance that I've just mentioned that we're launching today, as well as tailored country assistance that includes financing for projects in country. And we heard from Colombia, they've been one of the beneficiaries of this technical assistance from the CCAC, as well as a variety of other countries. Countries do not necessarily need to be members of the CCAC, although we encourage countries to consider becoming member of the CCAC in order to receive support from our menu of support options. And the CCAC also supports countries with scientific and technical reporting. We have a scientific assessment panel that has an ongoing process of providing really important reports on the non-CO₂ pollutants that give us both the science and the solutions and ways forward. So this integrated approach also includes coalition building, where CCAC works with its partners and works in the variety of forums that address the different non-CO₂ pollutants, such as the UNFCCC, the Montreal Protocol, initiatives such as the Global Methane Pledge, and we're looking forward at the upcoming COP29 in Azerbaijan to an initiative that will address methane through approaches on organic waste. So we support the coming together of countries and consensus building and solution building in those different forums to advance these solutions for for the NDCs, both in their preparation and in their implementation. Just a little bit more information about how we do our work. We support planning and capacity building. There are there's project financing support available from $100,000 to $200,000 per project to support short-lived climate pollutant strategies, non-CO₂ integration, monitoring, reporting, and verification, that kind of work at the national planning and NDC development level. We also support sectoral mitigation projects ranging from 100 to 700,000 per project, and these work specifically in the various sectors that I explained earlier, the sectors from which the non-CO₂ pollutants sourced. CCAC has a team of national experts and a growing team in a variety of countries and that support institution strengthening in member countries, and that's one of the, let's say, motivators or benefits of CCAC membership is the specific national experts that we support in countries. And finally, support for targeted expert assistance when necessary, and countries can solicit that support directly from the CCAC. For example, to support an NDC update, exactly what we're talking about today. Here's just an example of the variety of support that CCAC has provided, and if you go to our website, you can go into any one of these boxes and learn more about the work that we have done with countries. Some of these are sectoral reports. Some of them are specific reports on the work that we've done in countries. And as I mentioned, we are launching today the finalization of a series of reports, which is a large guidance package. It's practical guidance to countries on how to include non-CO₂ and air quality considerations in their NDCs. Previous reports from the CCAC have provided deep information, detailed information on why it's important to do this, and this guidance goes to the next step and helps countries in the process to develop the specific goals and measures to include in their NDCs, with accompanying information about how to support the transparency and reporting requirements under the UNFCCC. We have there are 5 chapters, an introduction chapter that gives a broad description of how and especially gives a significant amount of information about how to address the reporting, and then 4 chapters that dive deeply into 4 focus areas of non-CO₂ pollutants, and those are black carbon, the air quality considerations that Tom talked to us about, that the Clean Air Fund has supported, also the preparation of that chapter. A chapter focusing on methane and the different methane sectors, methane producing sectors. Another chapter on cooling, where we address both the hydrofluorocarbons and the energy efficiency considerations to address the mitigation potential in the cooling sector, as well as aspects relating to the adaptation opportunities that can be included in NDCs in the cooling sector. And then finally, a chapter on nitrous oxide, which is another super pollutant, but again, remember, not one of the short-lived climate pollutants, but an increasingly important climate pollutant, as well as an ozone depleting substance. I touched upon the overarching recommendations in the earlier presentation, so I won't go back to those again, but just to underline the point of the importance of including goals in the economy-wide target, as well as specific measures relating to the non-CO₂ pollutants. And I emphasize this because we've seen that previous NDCs mention the variety of non-CO₂ pollutants, but do not specifically include goals or measures. The NDCs just include the non-CO₂ pollutants as part of the basket of gases that countries will be addressing. So we hope to see an evolution in the next NDC 3.0 with more specificity. And Tom and others talked about why this is important, why it's beneficial, and all of the benefits that countries can receive from doing this. A few of the principles for why we do this, and these are highlighted in the guidance report, is that non-CO₂ pollutants should be additional to action on CO₂. It's not a replacement of the action, but it is complementary to mitigation and action in NDCs on carbon dioxide. Should be comprehensive in support of the economy-wide target, implementation-oriented, so with specific time-bound targets, policies and actions integrated at the national level, as well as supporting those regional approaches, and including and technical and financial both support to help the eventual implementation of elements on non-CO₂ that they choose to include in upcoming NDCs. The non-CO₂ aspects should be ambitious, and they will necessarily, just including this layer of additional actions in the NDCs, will necessarily increase the ambition in the NDCs. And we recommend that these approaches be collaborative, integrating a broad group of stakeholders in countries at the regional and global level, and also working across all ministries in the country. I've already touched upon, and so has Tom, the multiple benefits of reducing non-CO₂ pollutants, and you will find those also highlighted throughout the guidance. Keeping these in mind and knowing these well will also help you as advocates and proponents, as partners working to address the non-CO₂ pollutants. These benefits that we highlight here should be part of your talking points when you speak with others in your country, with other partners, to also explain to them the importance of these strategies and approaches. The primary audience for the NDC guidance are national climate policymakers who are involved in the NDC preparations, but also experts, implementing agencies, and other stakeholders. And I'll just move through this quickly because we've touched upon it in a variety of other moments during the webinar. and come to sort of our the conclusion to explain, in the guidance how we approach the practical steps towards going from an NDC that has either very generally touched upon the non-CO2 pollutants to specifically addressing them. We take a process strategy approach from the early stages of information collection and assessment, so that the measures and policies and goals that that countries include, so that they are grounded in the national circumstances, so that they're very specific and tailored to national circumstances and realities. I will skip over this, but it's just an example of the level of detail in the NDC guidance, where you see on the left-hand side what's required under the Katowice package, and the recommendations that the guidance offers in terms of going that next step to including the non-CO2 pollutants. These are the 5 chapters, and we invite you to come to our website. Here on the left-hand side, the QR code will take you to all of the CCAC's support for non-CO2, including that technical assistance, the reports that we've provided. And on the right-hand side, the QR code will take you directly to the guidance document. You can download all of those documents. So thank you so much for your attention. And now I'd like to open just for a few moments of Q&A. I see that there's already, I believe, one person who's been patiently waiting to ask a question or perhaps share a comment. And I invite our speakers to also address Q&A as they come up. If you have a specific question for one of the speakers, please let us know for which speaker. Omar, I see that you have your hand raised. Can I ask you to share your question or comment with us?
Yeah. Hello, good afternoon. Do you hear me?
Yes, good afternoon, Omar.
Yeah. Actually, in the first presentation, I want to ask about the recovery and reuse of fugitive emission from oil and gas. What is the technology used for this section?
So if I understood correctly, the question is a very specific technical question about the technologies and approaches available in the oil and gas sector to recovery and reuse of gas or of methane, perhaps. That level of technicality is beyond my expertise on that topic. In the chapter on methane, we do have quite a lot of resources relating to the options for different measures that countries can take in the oil and gas sector. There's a subsection in that chapter for oil and gas, so I would encourage you to download that chapter, where I think you'll find some of that information. And if not specifically there, that chapter, as well as all the other chapters, include sections on resources where you can find other institutions as well as publications that provide a lot of detail that could answer this kind of question. So thanks for that question. And sorry, I can't give you a more scientific or technical answer, but I hope that I've pointed you in the right direction.
Okay,
Are there, sure. Are there any other questions at the moment? I've seen a number of requests in the chat for information, for presentations, for links to contacts with the speakers, and we'll provide those for everyone. Everyone who has joined us today will receive a follow-up email with all of those resources. So seeing no additional questions or comments from the audience, I would invite Jimmy to help me with a couple closing questions for poll. CCAC and its partners, the Clean Air Fund and National NDC partnership would like to know a little bit more so that we can provide the best support to you and the best resources moving forward. Of the 5 chapters that I outlined, which of the chapters of the guidance do you think will be most interesting or most useful for you in your work? The introduction, methane, cooling, air quality, or N2O? See a lot of interest in the methane sector. That's fabulous. Thank you. Give a couple more moments for answers from the audience. Thanks. And then our final question for the audience from the poll: what are some of the main challenges that you face in addressing non-CO₂ in your work? And you can just answer you can answer a sentence or a few words. What are some of the challenges that you think that you currently face or that you might face in integrating non-CO₂ into the work that you do? Maybe give a couple more moments for your response and leave you with that question also to consider what could be some of the challenges, and then you can share with the partners here by email or otherwise what those challenges are, so that we can help you overcome any one of those obstacles as you continue your work forward. So thank you for those answers. Yeah, I see financing and technical and other access to resources is definitely one of the big ones. Well, thank you so much. I want to thank all of our speakers today for taking the time to be with us, and especially a very heartfelt thanks to the audience for joining us today. We look forward to continuing to stay in contact with you and hear from you as you approach some of the resources that we have shared. And please don't hesitate to be in touch. We look forward to working with you and seeing you in the future. Thanks again, everyone, for being with us. And if you know of others in the Asia Pacific, South Asia part of the world, we are repeating this webinar tomorrow, so that that people in that region can also access the webinar. So thanks again. Thanks to my team from the CCAC, Jimmy and Ava, for helping out with the webinar today. And have a wonderful rest of your day, afternoon, and evening to everyone. Thank you very much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks all. Thanks, Anna Maria. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.